Hello, everybody. My name is Emma, and I did the Meet a Marine Biologist Monday presentation on Monday just passed, on Monday the 13th of April. I just thought I would share it for anyone else who wishes to listen in. The topic is whales, as you can probably guess from the photo, also known as cetaceans, the scientific name. So sit back, relax, and get ready to listen to some whale information. So just quickly, a little bit about me. You may or may not be able to tell from the accent, but I am actually Scottish. But I have spent the past 2 years living and working in New Zealand and Canada. My educational background, my undergrad is actually in zoology, and I'm currently studying my postgrad in wildlife biology and conservation. So two pretty broad subjects, but it's definitely the ocean that is where my passion lies. I love everything about the water. I love swimming, I love surfing, I love diving, and of course, I love all of the wildlife and the ecosystem that is there in the ocean. So all the more reason to conserve it if you love it. I've been lucky enough to work in ecotourism for the past couple of years, and these have been water-based, aboard vessels, boats, looking at marine life. So I have been lucky enough to see quite a lot of marine life out there, and that includes whales. So I did work on a whale watch boat over the summer months last summer, so April till October last year. And this was in Victoria in British Columbia, Canada. So if you don't know where Victoria is, if you go to the west coast of North America, you've got Vancouver, big famous city. And then just off the west coast, you have a little island called Vancouver Island. And this city there is Victoria, just where that star is. So that is where I was working on a whale watch boat last summer. It's really close to the USA. You can see the red dotted line on the image here. If you cross that line, you are into USA waters, and that's Washington State down here. Of course, whales don't really know borders, so they could be in Canada or they could have been in the USA. So we were allowed to cross the border. There was no problem with that. But this was the general area that we were searching for whales during our whale watching trips. So my role on the boat was as an onboard biologist, so to interpret our experience, to tell people about the area, and most importantly, to tell people about the wildlife and the whales that we were seeing. So the species of whales that we would see on our trips, two most common species were the killer whale and the humpback. They were the two whale species that we'd see most often. Sometimes grey whale. I saw one grey whale over the summer months, or minke whales as well. That's another species you could see. But two main species were killer whale and humpback whale. Of course, it's not just whales that are out there. There's other species too. Porpoise, seals, sea lions, seabirds, and of course we'd stop for all of them as well, and have a wee look. But the main goal was to see the whales. So to see whales, you have to find them first. So just a quick little insight into being a biologist on boards. You are looking out to try and spot those whales. Two really good identifiers are: one, look out for fins, and two, look out for the whales below. Excuse me. So firstly, fins. Pretty obvious. If you see something like this when you're looking off the boat, you'll have yourself some whales. From far away, it would just look like little black dots, but that was a good indicator that there were some orca, some killer whales over there. The second one is a blow. So this would be more for the larger species of whales. You can actually still see an orca's blow, but it's a really good giveaway of those larger whales. And you can see from this diagram, the blows of a whale are all different shapes and sizes. And that just depends on the anatomy, the construction of their blowhole, what size and shapes their blowholes are. So for example, you can see the southern right whale here. It's kind of two balloon type shaped blow it would look like. A grey whale actually looks like a heart shape when it blows. Humpback whale, which we would be looking out for, has quite a straight column-like blow that can get up to about 3 meters in height. So it's a really good indication of whales there. It's basically a big arrow pointing down saying, look here, which really helps us out. Now, these blows, you may think it's a little bit like an elephant shooting water out of its trunk, but it's not. So this kind of puff of smoke appearance is actually just the whale's exhale. It's just the whale breathing out. And because these animals are mammals, they're warm-blooded, that air from their lungs is hot. So when they breathe out, the hot air meets the cooler air, it condensates a bit like on your mirror when you have a shower in the bathroom, and it does form little water droplets. So that's what you're seeing there. It's just the hot air that has come out of the whale's lungs. So that is the blow. So even if you're out on your own boat and you're looking for whales, look out for fins and look out for that puff of smoke, that blow. So what actually are whales? Well, this is a diagram of all the whales in the world. Scientific name for all the whales in the world is cetaceans. So that's a good word to remember. There's approximately 90 species of cetaceans worldwide. I say approximately because unfortunately we do lose species, but we do gain them. There is scientific research into looking for new species too, so that number is in flux, but at the moment it kind of sits at around 90 species. And then you can actually have that group of cetaceans split into two. So you'll see in this diagram, you've got these big whales on the left-hand side. These are all baleen whales. And then you've got your toothed whales on the right-hand side, which are including the smaller ones. You see here, these are your dolphins and your porpoise. So, yep, dolphins and porpoises are actually whales as well. They're whales first and foremost. They're in that group called cetaceans, and then they get split off into dolphins and porpoises. The largest of the toothed whales is the sperm whale up here. And then the largest animal of the baleen whales, and actually the largest animal in the whole planet, is the blue whale up here. So these are all your cetaceans that you'll find in our oceans. So just to reiterate, you've got that big umbrella term called cetaceans that includes all your whales, your dolphins, your porpoises. They all belong to that group. That group can then be split off into two, and from that, you're either a toothed whale or you're a baleen whale. So what actually determines which group you'll be in? So toothed whales, in Greek, it's odontoceti, which translates to toothed sea monster, which is a pretty good name. Funnily enough, they have teeth. So if you're ever lucky enough to look in a whale's mouth, you see teeth like ours, you'll have a toothed whale. These teeth vary in shape and size. If you're a dolphin, you have pointy cone-like teeth. and porpoises have rounded spade-like teeth. So that's a good way of telling your species. You can get down to pretty good ID level through the teeth. Toothed whales have a single blowhole. So on top of the whale here, there'll be a little round hole, and that's what it breathes in and out of. And all toothed whales just have a single blowhole. Also, another good identifier of toothed whales is that the males tend to be bigger than the females. Not in every species case, but in general, males are bigger than the females, as you can see in the orca here. So that is toothed whales. Now, the harder one you may not have heard of before, baleen whales. So the Mysticeti, a Greek translation is mustached whale, which is quite a nice phrase. So baleen, what exactly is it? So if you look at the picture here, these bristle-like structures is the baleen. Now baleen is made from keratin. So you will have encountered keratin in your everyday life. It is actually a part of you. It is in your hair and it's in your fingernails. So just imagine baleen is just like giant fingernails, and they happen to be in the mouth of the baleen whales. So these whales, they do not have teeth in their mouths. They have giant fingernails. That is what makes baleen whales so distinct. Now, these baleen plates, if you've ever tried to break down food with your fingernails, it's not very good. Definitely need teeth for that. So that is not the purpose of these baleen plates in the whale's mouth. They're actually used like a giant sieve. So they filter out the water. Baleen whales take huge gulps of water into their mouth. They'll then stick their tongue to the roof of their mouth. They'll push the water back through these plates, and the food will get caught in behind these plates. The water will go out, and then they'll swallow their food whole. So baleen plates are not a tooth substitute. They actually have a completely different purpose, and they're used for filtering out the water. That is the biggest indication that you have a baleen whale. If it's got baleen, it's a baleen whale. Another good indication you have a baleen whale is the blowholes. Again, look at the top of the animal. If it has two blowholes, then you have a baleen whale. And in this instance, remember the toothed whales, the males were bigger. In the baleen whales, the females are bigger. So that's kind of the three main characteristics of the baleen whales. So I'm going to go through a representative of each of the groups, and they just so happen to be the whales that we would see most often. So from the toothed whales, our representative today is the killer whale, also known as the orca. Sorry. So one of the most common questions we would get on board would be, are killer whales and orca the same animal? The answer is yes, they are the same. Killer whale is just their common name. They got the name killer whale because they're known to kill and eat whales. The name orca, it comes from their Latin name here, Orcinus orca. It makes up the second part. And a translation of Orcinus orca from Greek is demon whale. So whatever language you put it, these whales are getting a bit of a bad reputation. They're either killer whales or they're demon whales. Interestingly, rumor has it that the name for these whales, orca, was actually made popular by SeaWorld. They didn't really like having killer whale in the title of their banners and posters. They didn't think it was a good marketing strategy. So they decided to use orca instead. And it's said that SeaWorld is who really made orca more popular. So their appearance, they are nicknamed actually sea pandas because they are black and white. They do, as you can see in these photos, have quite a dolphin-like dorsal fin. That is because these animals are actually the world's largest dolphin. They are a member of the dolphin family. Remember, all dolphins are whales, and killer whales do then belong to the dolphin family. So the males are the largest, and we've got two females here in this photo and a juvenile in the middle. Males are the largest. We've got two males up here. They have a very distinctive dorsal fin. You'll see here it's very triangular. It doesn't have that curvature in the photos here. And it is very large. So it's very evident if you have a fully grown male orca in the pod. That dorsal fin can get up to 2 meters in height. Just to give you that perspective, here I am, and I'm not even 2 meters in height. So me standing on a back of a killer whale, do not do that at home, would be the size of the dorsal fin, and it could even be bigger than that. So very evident when you have a male in the pod. But size is not everything. Male killer whales may be bigger, but it's the females that are in charge. The social structure of killer whales is super interesting. It's what we call a matriarchal society. So it's the oldest female in the pod that is the leader, and that often is the grandmother. And she will dictate the pod's movements. She will tell them when to hunt, when to sleep, where to go. She is the boss. And really interestingly, those big males, if you see a big male in the pod, that's not dad. That is actually the eldest son. So boys always stick with their mothers. Killer whale boys always stick with their mum for the whole of their life. More often than not, they're big mama's boys. So when you see a group of killer whales, it will be the mum with her offspring, and maybe a grandmother there too, and those big male killer whales are your sons. And it's actually the females that are responsible for creating new pods. So a mum has a daughter killer whale. That killer whale will stay with her mum until she's had maybe 1 or 2 offspring of her own. So just like humans, they get a little bit of help from their mum to raise maybe 1 or 2 calves. And then they'll take their calves off. And that is how a new pod is created. But the boys, they always stay with their mothers. They have no part in raising their calves. And lastly, they love to socialize. So say you have that daughter with her calves off in a different pod now, and her mum and her brother are over here. If they happen to be in the same area, they will remember each other, they will know each other, and they can go on and socialize. And when killer whales socialize, that's quite often when you'll see all of the acrobatics, the jumping and the splashing. It's quite amazing to see. Another difference between male and female killer whales is their lifespan. So males actually don't have as long a lifespan as females. Males live till about 30 to 40 years old, whereas females live about 60 to 70 years old. Couple of reasons for this. One is that matriarchal society. So females do have a role in the pod out with reproduction. They are the bosses. They tell everyone what to do. They have a lot of knowledge to pass on, whereas the males don't. And also, actually, a more somber reason why females can live longer than males is to do with toxins. So if you can imagine a pyramid, the food chain of the ocean, killer whales are right up at the top. There is nothing that scares them. They are the bosses of the ocean. But unfortunately, that means all the toxins that are ingested at the lower food chains, so the lower phytoplankton, which then gets eaten by zooplankton and then gets eaten by smaller fish, that's eaten by bigger fish. It all builds up in the food chain, and it's in its highest concentration in the killer whales. Luckily for the females, they have a way of getting rid of some of these toxins, and that is by giving birth. So when a killer whale female gives birth to her offspring, she actually transfers some of those toxins to her young, so she can get rid of some of them. Unfortunately, the males don't have this method to get rid of their toxins, so that also contributes to their lower lifespan. In fact, killer whales, if you find a killer whale washed up dead on the beach, they have to be treated like toxic waste. They've got so many toxins in them that they have to be disposed of correctly. So orca are super interesting. They are found in every single ocean in the planet. So they are just about as widely distributed as humans. And just like us, depending on where you find the killer whales, they have different mannerisms, different ways of communicating with each other, different diets, and different behavior. So as an example, here where I am just now in New Zealand, the killer whales quite like going after the stingray. They particularly like eating them. Just off the coast of Norway, the killer whales there are known for their tactics in corralling herring. They really like eating the herring. And then off the west coast of North America, where I was working last summer, we get two different groups who have two different food preferences. We have one group that prefers marine mammals, and we have another group that prefers salmon. And the name for these different groups and different behaviors in killer whales is ecotypes. So like us, killer whales are the same species across the whole globe. We are all Homo sapiens. But depending on where you find them, you get different ecotypes of killer whales. So just to tell you more about the two main ecotypes that we would get around the west coast of Canada. First are the transient killer whales, and these are the marine mammal eaters. So their favorite marine mammal to eat is harbor seal. That makes up about 60% of their diet. They probably need to eat about one harbor seal per adult killer whale per day. They do share their meals with each other, so one orca wouldn't just take one seal and eat it to themselves. They would share it around and keep going until everyone is satisfied. They do also eat sea lions, porpoise, other whales, and they have been known to eat great white sharks. So killer whales are definitely something to be feared if you're a marine mammal and you come across a transient killer whale. You'd want to get out the way. So the population of transient killer whales are actually doing really well. It's sitting at about 350 individuals. Reason for that, or one of the reasons, is because seal and sea lion hunting was banned in the area I was working in the 1970s. And that means there's more seals and sea lions around. More seals and sea lions around mean more food for the killer whales. Killer whales that are happy with full bellies are more likely to reproduce. So actually at the moment, the transient killer whale population is growing by about 4% every year. So that is really good. Long may it continue. The other ecotype that we would see off the coast of Canada were the southern resident killer whales. Now, these killer whales actually didn't eat any marine mammals. They preferred salmon. Most specifically, Chinook salmon made up the largest component of their diet. So really picky eaters here. And unfortunately, their population is not doing so well. It is declining. There was 72 as of January 2019. There was a baby born over last summer when I was there, bringing the population to 73 when I left in October. But it's still not very big at all. And the reason it's declining is because there's simply not enough salmon in the waters. The waters are so polluted, and also because of dam building that is stopping salmon from swimming up the river to breed. It's stopping salmon populations being really large, and then that's again knock-on effect to the killer whales that eat the salmon. So it's a tale of two halves here. You've got southern residents in decline, the salmon eaters, and then you've got the transient killer whales who are actually doing well, the marine mammal eaters. Or as I like to think of them, transient killer whales are like humans who prefer McDonald's, and then the southern resident killer whales are like humans who prefer sushi. So that's a good way of remembering them. So if you have any killer whale questions after that, write them down, maybe give us an email and we can answer them.